So we should be going live. We're actually not going to start for another 2.5 minutes, but I wanted to make sure that all the feeds are going live. It actually looks really good on our end. But I'll have my I have my eyes on the ground checking for me. Text me if you don't see anything. You have your water, you have your coffee.
It's kind of late for coffee, isn't it?
Actually, so I've got. This is going to sound really weird, and if my wife ever watches this, which I trust that she will at some point, she's off with the kids' events tonight. But honestly, I don't know. We've been married for 26 years. I don't know that she's ever seen me cry. So I'm a little bit nervous. I don't even have tissues. I have toilet paper in case it happens. But
I got a clean here for you. I could get it to you somehow through the
right
live feed.
Yeah. So, but yeah, this is great, and I'm so appreciative that you guys are here and wanting to tell your story. It is jumping on. So, you guys still have snow on the ground?
No. Maybe in those big piles from the parking lots that they had to plow, but otherwise, no.
So I was just out.
You could actually go fishing down here.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Not that there's any fish or lakes to fish down here, but you could do it.
The neighbor boys were fishing yesterday.
I legitimately have no life. I don't even own a fishing pole. I don't mind fishing. It's a little bit boring unless you're catching fish, but I don't even own a fishing pole. I don't have a boat. We don't have a second house. I look at code books and manufacturer's installation instructions as a hobby, and that's what a loser I am. So, well, it is 7:30, and I want to get this started. So, Jim, you and I go way back. I still remember the days that I was I had a roofing company, and I was also a part-time youth pastor at a church in Coon Rapids, and you would come as my GAF rep and come and visit me in at the church, and we would talk roofing. I don't know if you remember those days, but that was
I remember.
Had to be 2002.
Yep, I remember meeting the parking lot up there.
So your start in the roofing industry was late 90s, right? So tell me a little bit about your experience as a contractor, and then what made you switch to the manufacturing.
Yeah, so we decided with two of my brothers to start our own company. That's the American dream, right? So we decided that the easiest thing to do would be to start a roofing company versus like a bank or something, obviously. So we did a roofing company. I had that for many years. My goal was to leave that legacy for my kids, actually. That was the goal going into it. And so did that for quite a few years around the Minneapolis, St. Paul area there. Did roofing and siding as a contractor. And then, never really even had a thought process of not continuing on with our company business. And my wife, Jody, helped me a lot with that piece of it. Older brother was the county side, finance side, and then one of my younger brothers, John, was helped me a lot with the operations. So that was going pretty well, actually, and God gave us favor there, and we were getting good number of work, good amount of business, everything, and then I got a call out of the blue, literally, from a roofing manufacturer wanting to do an interview with me, and I said no to it couple times, and they kept bugging me and said, hey, seriously, like, we'd really like to sit down and I'm like, fine, okay. Finally, okay, you guys, that's fine, I'll sit down with you. So they flew in from Illinois to sit down with me, did an interview. They were actually late because the snow was a really bad snowstorm. It was in the middle of January, and I ended up doing an interview with them and walked out, and I thought, no big deal, And then they called me within probably a few days and offered me a job. And I was not expecting that. So I said, well, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. And so I really prayed through it, prayed hard through it. Didn't want to leave my brothers, didn't want to leave the company. Never had any idea of, leaving the company. And God just really spoke to Jody and I and just said, you know what? There's a reason for this. And, you weren't looking for it. I dropped in your lap and there's a reason for this. So we stepped out in faith and decided to take a job that I never thought I was even looking for.
And this is my favorite part of the whole story. What manufacturer was that?
Well, for those that have been in the roofing industry for a while, it was Globe Building Materials. It was a regional player. It had a couple of plants in the upper Midwest, one in Whiting, Indiana, one in St. Paul, and a small plant over in Cornell, Wisconsin that ran felt. So Globe Building Materials, yeah, they were actually a pretty big regional player at the time. So they wanted me for an outside territory manager. So took the position, I think, on a Friday morning. I think I accepted the position. So, yep.
So that's we do have some OG people here. I'm sure that'll recognize that name. I know a lot of my friends are in the Name That Shingle group. So that's going to take us back a while. So if anybody's from the Name That Shingle group and wants to hear a little bit more about Globe shingles and probably see a lot of T-locks, where a lot of T-locks were coming out of the Globe plants. So Jody, tell me a little bit about, so what year were you guys married? And then at this point, when this transition, and the reason why I'm asking this is because, again, Jim kind of mentioned it too, but we're talking about your story and Briella's story in terms of God's favor to you as a couple and as a family. So Jim's starting to make all these transitions now. How far into your marriage are you? And then kind of, what's going on at home during this time?
Well, when we started the roofing company, it was about 6 years, just under 6 years into our marriage. We had one child at the time, and life we thought was great. It was a big step of faith to walk into a new company, but we really felt like God was going to provide. That was kind of the theme that we just sensed he was going to provide. Then with the job offer from Globe, I was pregnant with our second son at the time. And we were just doing life and really felt at the time too that this was God's perfect timing and didn't understand, but God was going to provide, and this was the way he was providing for us. And so just really felt like it was time to step away from the company, and maybe that would allow for a little bit more time with family, because having your own business takes a lot of time.
So why don't you introduce your family here? This is what year was this taken, and introduce the crew here.
Was that 2017?
I believe that's 2017. Yeah. So that is one sitting down there. Well, the one would be on the right.
That's by himself a little bit.
Off by himself would be Cody. So he's our oldest. He's currently 24. Then, of course, you see my beautiful wife, Jody, there. And then you go with our youngest boy, Dawson. He's standing in the middle there with the zip up on there. Then you see myself, and then you see our daughter, Briella. She was 12 years younger than Cody. So quite the spread there. And then Jaden, that's sitting there with the Under Armour sweatshirt on. So that's our family. They're Cody's 24, Jaden is 21, and Dawson's currently 20. So there's a 12-year spread between Cody and Briella.
So the three boys came right away in a pack, and then 8 years.
Pretty much.
So Jody, you are the mother of 3 young boys for 8 years. Tell me a little bit about the craziness of that, and especially as we're going to be talking about then the miracle of finding out that you're pregnant with a little girl.
Well, it was chaos. to say the least. I remember telling him many times because I couldn't handle it downstairs. That was just my way of handling. I grew up with just one sister, so boys and their antics was not something that I was very familiar with. All my life, I just wanted kids, and so God gave us 3 boys, but really my deep heart's desire was that little girl. I wanted healthy babies, but really I wanted that little girl to connect with too. But God gave us three boys, and it was a little crazy.
But it was cool. It was fun. Yeah, it was a blast. They were all within 5 years.
4 years and a couple months. Yep.
And so, yeah, a little hectic, but what boys aren't? And it was a lot of fun. So that was our life.
So you've got 3 little boys.
Yep.
You've got a stint with Globe, and I don't think we've mentioned how long was that stint with Globe, by the way.
Well, I took the job on a Friday, and I specifically remember 2 weeks later on a Friday morning, we were getting ready to take off. I don't know what we were doing, and I took this phone call middle of the morning, I think it was, and it was the sales director, and he said, "Hey, I got some news for you." I'm like, "Oh, really? What's that?" He said, "Well, just so you know, we just went chapter 13. I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "Well, I got to let you know the bank just came in and grabbed a hold of everything, and we just went chapter 13. I'm like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. We won't know till next week what's going to happen. We're going to try to get out of it, try to work through it. But yeah, I had to call everybody and let you guys know that we're in chapter 13. And I remember thinking, so this is interesting. God took me out of my own roofing company to a position that I never thought I would ever want. I go step out and take that position, and within 2 weeks, I find out the company's in bankruptcy.
Which meant no more salary, only commission, because there was still product to sell.
And of course, I'm brand new, and the previous individual that was selling in my territory had cancer, and he hadn't been selling for a while. So needless to say, there was no sales. So it was a little bit interesting, but I remember walking away from that phone call, and for some reason, I had a peace that was unbelievable. And I remember we went and did our thing that weekend, and it didn't bother me. I don't know how, I don't know why, but God just gave us favor by having this peace that said he's going to take care of this one way or the other. And I don't know where it came from, because there's no explanation other than it came from God, because 2 weeks into a brand new job and find out the company's going down.
It's not every day. In fact, I don't think anybody has ever said, as an answer to the question, how long are you with this company? And it starts with, well, I started on a Friday.
Yeah.
2 Fridays later.
Yeah.
But that obviously, when when you go through something like that, you had 3 boys at this time, right? So you've got a young family, 3 boys, or were 2 of them still in the middle of that?
I was pregnant with Jaden, so there was just Cody.
Okay. So you're just starting out. You have one on the way. You take a 2 week, and then you were how long between that and when JF came calling?
So it was probably.
It was before August, because.
Yeah, it was maybe 6 months.
It was probably June.
5 months. Yeah, right around 5 months. And I actually interviewed with JF a couple of times, and the first time I did not get the position, and so I worked a job as a printing company salesperson downtown Minneapolis. Very fun, but anyway, so yeah, I found that job in interim, and then applied again, and then the second time I interviewed, GAF actually hired me, and I think the reason they did is because they knew I had worked for Globe Building Materials. And I don't think anybody ever asked me how long I was there until after the fact. So, because I remember that comment being made after the fact. I thought you had a lot more experience in the roofing manufacturing world. I'm like, well, I didn't say how long I had experience. I just had experience. I didn't tell you it was only 2 weeks, and then maybe 3 after that before they actually went under. So, but
Well, it
yeah,
was 14 days,
yeah,
not
14
years.
days. So yeah, I
Um,
got hired by GF, and that was, obviously a blessing, and a lot of people coveted that job, and a lot of people could have got that job, and God obviously worked that out for us, and we found favor in Him providing that job for us, and that was 16 years. I mean, that was a large part of our life, obviously, for the next.
So I'm glad that you said that you had interviewed before and that you didn't get the job, because something very similar happened to me when you got promoted, and I put my name in for the position to replace you, and I was not good enough to be a JF rep, and so you didn't hire me, and so I had to go back, and evidently I had no future in roofing in your eyes. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, that was short-lived, though. That was short-lived.
That was short-lived.
That was short.
Yeah, so you hired 2 others. In fact, it was 2 people that you hired before me. But then you told me about the composite decking division, which went about as well as the Globe experience did.
That is true. That's right. That's right.
So, but it's fascinating though, because at that point, now we're talking about 2010. And that was about the time that I had joined GAF with the composite decking. I got to meet your team and work a little bit closer to you, even though I was in a different division of the company. And meanwhile, Briella is born and joins the family. So tell me a little bit about the transition there and the boys and how they handled it and what your feelings were. And now you've got 4.
Well, it definitely wasn't expected. We got to the point, or at least I should say, I got to the point where I was thoroughly enjoying life with 3 boys. God had to teach me some lessons, and they were my joy. They were pretty much my everything. I was a stay-at-home mom and just investing in them. I wanted to leave a legacy that they would want to follow after Jesus. And so that was what we were pouring into. And
That was our family.
Lo and behold, totally actively not trying, because we were happy with 3 boys, we got pregnant.
Yep.
And they clearly take after Dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously.
Yep. So yes.
Um,
And the boys actually told us we were ruining their life when they found out we were having a little girl, because they didn't really know what to do with a little girl. We had taught them enough that girls are different. You need to have love and respect for them. You can't play with them the same way. And they thought there was no way that our family could handle that.
Can't roughhouse with a little baby girl,
But they just, I mean, but it's so different, right? I mean, did they just like treat her like she's this precious, valuable thing, or were they like, well, you can't play football with her? What good is that?
Well, she was the princess of the castle by their doing, not necessarily our doing.
They'll say differently. They'll say it was our doing. So, well,
but they definitely spoiled her. She rocked their world.
So it's exciting to see. So now you have a little girl. Now you are continuing to be showing favor from the company you're with. You're moving up in the ranks. You become regional. Things are seeming to really go well. And then there comes another transition. And talk about the relocating now. How's Briella handling it? How's the boys handling on the job transition again, and where you end up now, where you're in Sioux Falls from the Twin Cities?
Yeah, for me, GF was very good for us as a family and very good to me. And I learned a ton there, and always kind of said, if you could do that job, you could do any job. Right. And so, thoroughly enjoyed that, thoroughly enjoyed all the relationships that, I built over the years, thousands and thousands of contacts I still have. Being out and about and really meeting all the different great people that are in the roofing industry. And God started working on me, well before I was ready, because it's easy to be just complacent and and be comfortable, right? And so there's actually a company that had come to me and asked me to interview for a sales position, and it was a smaller company, and they kind of wanted me to come in and kind of help them learn sales and everything, and so I interviewed, and then they called me and said they weren't even going to do the position. And then quite a few months later, they called and the same thing happened. And so I went and interviewed with them and had to go through the whole interview process again. And they were actually looking at maybe a little bit of a sales director or different things. And they were really trying to get their sales force up and running versus a independent agency, you know. And so I thought, well, man, I don't know. It'd be a whole different world. But so I went and interviewed again, trying to stay open to God's leading. And they called me again and said that weren't filling the position and weren't even doing the position. So it happened to me twice. And I remember thinking like, okay, God, like that's weird. And I remember God saying, okay, I remember feeling like I'd walked to the edge of a cliff and decided I was going to jump off the cliff. And God said, no, I don't want you to jump off the cliff. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm ready to do it finally. Like, you don't want me to. And he was prepping me because that was probably a year later when I was approached by Building Products Incorporated, BPI. And it was mentioned would I be interested in coming and working for them. And that probably was 4 months process probably. It's quite a few months process as far as thinking through it and saying, okay, this would be a change. And I think God prepped me by those other interviews to say, hey, are you ready to move on? Like, I have something else for you. I have a new mission field for you. And yeah, you know, I've given you a lot of favor in GAF. I've given you a lot of favor in relationships and the team and everything that you enjoy. But I have another field for you. And so he prepped me for that. And so I remember Jody wisely looking at me one time and saying, okay, in order to make this decision, ask yourself, why wouldn't you? Is the reason you want? And that I pretty much did it. And I couldn't come up with a reason not to, other than that I was comfortable. So I made the leap and switched over to BPI, and that was 2016, middle of 2016. And knew that at some point, we both knew that we may have to move to Sioux Falls at some point if we were going to be working for BPI, and we felt that in the back of our minds, but really had no idea what that meant or how long that would be or anything. So that was 2016 when I took that new position, and kind of in the middle of a lot of other things going on and work, church-related stuff and everything that we were involved with pretty heavily at church. But yeah, so that's what led me to changing companies again after a strong 16 years. Yep.
So the whole family then packs up and moves
Well,
to Sioux Falls, or
not
were
yet.
some of the boys already
No,
moving out anyway?
the Sioux Falls didn't happen right away.
Yep.
That didn't happen until 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Briella's gymnastics career. I know this has become such a big part of her family and her story, and continues. And so that everybody knows, we're going to put a link in the comments as well to follow the Facebook page Briella's story. You'll see a lot of gymnastics in there. Tell me a little bit about her gymnastics, and as that starts picking up.
Well, she would tell you it was from the time she was born that either dance or gymnastics was going to be a part of her life, because she was kind of in the womb with one leg over her head and was kind of stuck. So it was I had to have a C-section because of that. So she says it was from birth. She started off in dance, and then 2019 she decided that she wanted to try gymnastics. She's always loved gymnastics and dance, and she would do summer community ed stuff for gymnastics when she wasn't in dance classes, but she wanted to make the switch. Made the switch, and COVID happened, the gym shuts down, and then nothing. And then we end up finding out that, well, at the beginning of 2020, we knew we were going to have to move at some point in time, but we thought we were pushing it off another year. And then with COVID happening, we pushed the move up, and we moved and found a gym here in Sioux Falls, and that became our second family.
And she was competing at Excel level, right? And
Yes.
and progressing quite quickly, as I understand.
Yeah, she started out with the rec level because we moved too late in the summer for her to get in at the Excel level that first year down here. So advanced through a lot of the rec classes and had some great coaches there. And then the next tried out in the spring for the following fall, and she was one determined girl. She did bronze, Excel bronze for 1 year and skipped over Excel silver and went to Excel gold and was getting medals all across the board for everything, high marks when she was doing Excel bronze. She was actually first in the all around for the state of South Dakota at her age division.
Wow. And when was that one? Was that last summer then?
That would have been last spring, last April.
Last April. Okay. So a year ago, April. So let's progress, move on to, so it's November. She turns 12 in October, correct? She's at October birthday.
Yes.
Yep.
And she's at practice and go through kind of, let's start the story. What's happening? She's at practice and the coach comes up to you and.
Well, probably if you back up just to the beginning of school year, she's starting middle school. Anxiety is high for starting middle school. And it just never seemed to go down. It actually seemed to increase as we went farther into the year. Gymnastics now, she has anxiety going to gymnastics. And the owner of the gym many times would, hey, Briella, come here with me, give me a hug. I had to peel her off of me sometimes. The anxiety was so high. Nothing was making sense to us as to why this was happening. And then in November, the coach pulled me aside and said, we're seeing something off with Briella. We really think you need to get her checked out. And at that point, I was thinking, oh, she did hit her head about a month ago. Maybe she has a slight concussion. And okay, set up an appointment. Had no clue that a brain tumor would even be a possibility.
Yeah, I was actually out at a show in Phoenix. Had left that Wednesday, and she called me and said, yeah, that Thursday night after the coach from Wings Academy spoke to Jody after the practice, said, something's off here. And so Jody's like, well, what should we do? I said, well, get an appointment set up for Friday. And I was flying back on Friday, but I'm like, let's get an appointment set up. So I didn't think anything of it, So Jody set an appointment up to go in and see just our normal doctor. On Friday morning, went and pulled her out of school and went to the doctor and just for a normal checkup. That we thought it would be a normal checkup and maybe saying, hey, let her rest for a little bit. And
that was not the case. They noticed things right away. Her eyes were not tracking. Balance was off. And so they sent us down to the hospital for an MRI.
At what point did you start really kind of, at this point, you're still not really believing that it could be more than just something small?
Yeah, until they actually came in to tell us the news on that Saturday when the MRI happened. So Friday, the MRI wasn't able to happen because they told us to eat lunch on the way down to the hospital. And then they couldn't do the MRI sedated because she had eaten and she was way too anxious to do it unsedated, just to hear. They had her listen to all the noises she would hear, and that kind of put her over. So a trip to the ER that night so that they could do the emergency MRI on Saturday morning. And so I don't think, in my mind, Friday I should say that I was starting to notice her progressively getting worse that day from the time we first went to the doctor till we were in the ER and admitted to the hospital at like 8:30 at night. Her balance was getting worse. So then I'm becoming aware that something is really wrong. But I never ever thought it would be a brain tumor.
And then I flew back in, went right from the airport to the children's hospital, and we ended up shortly after I got there into the ER, and they did a bunch of tests, and poor Briella, I mean, about 20 different people did the exact same test, you know, and it was a long, long night, and ER doctor just pulled me aside and said, hey, you know, there's something going on in there, and it's not a you know, it has nothing to do with a concussion. But he thought it had something to do with, I mean, he threw a few things by me that would have been nothing serious. Might have been some medication he was thinking or something, and that was just what they were thinking. And so, yeah, we stayed there Friday night. They admitted us into the children's hospital, stayed there Friday night to do the MRI Saturday morning. You knew at that point, you know, we're like, okay, like she doesn't like MRIs, so, you know, had to work her through that. And she was really nervous about that and anxious about that. And then they went and did the MRI. And then that was Saturday morning. And then
Well, we went back to her room to wait because they said they would bring her back to us. We walked her down to have the MRI. And before she even made it up to the room, they came in the room and told us that there was a large mass deep within her brain. And at this point, we're thinking, okay, so now we have surgery to get ready for. And we've had multiple people we know that have had brain tumors, and they've had surgery and removed, and they're living full, productive lives now. So that's where our mind went at that point.
And she's 12.
What?
And she's 12. I mean, this doesn't happen to 12-year-old.
12, yes. And she was just doing aerials at gymnastics on Thursday night.
So then 11 o'clock Saturday morning, well, previous to that, they came and said, we need to sit down with you and meet with you guys. And like, okay. So we go into the room, and had a whole team of doctors there, had an oncologist there and a neurosurgeon and some nurses. And
pediatric and just regular.
Yeah. And sat down and they looked at us and they said, straight up, we got to tell you, your daughter's got a tumor on her spinal brainstem, and it is very large. It is very fast growing, and your daughter has six to 12 months to live. And that was the diagnosis. It was just like that, bam.
It is inoperable. There's nothing, because the brainstem, everything goes through it. There's no way to remove it.
They said it's the size of a pear already, so it's intertwined in all the nerves, and there's nothing we can do. You know, we can show you whatever you want, but there's been no cure found for this specific type of fast-growing cancer, and it was, you know, DIPG is the synonym for it, but and so that was the diagnosis we got at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, and of course that's the proverbial meeting, and we were at you know, in shock obviously, and they left the room and left us there, and obviously we're thinking, how are we going to do this? And we did look at each other. There's two things that we said to each other. One was that you got to remember that eternity is way longer than what we have here on Earth. So we need to make sure that we keep that in mind. And, you know, we knew Briella had faith. We knew that she had accepted Christ as her Savior, and we knew that where she would go. And so we said that. And the second thing we said is we looked at each other, we said, we got to stick together. Do this no matter what happens. And so that was our conversation, and proceeded to have to figure out how to start letting family know. And short of it, our family was gone. Pretty much everybody except Jaden. Everybody was out traveling. They weren't in Sioux Falls that weekend. And so we called Jaden. He came down. We had to share with him. And he really really helped us there, and kind of hung out with her a little bit as we started calling people, and had some dear friends come down. A dear friend come down and help us as well. And so then they said that they were going to go look into it, do a lot of research, get back to us. They were going to do second opinions and everything. And then Sunday morning they came to us and said, hey, we'd like to sit down again. And they were thinking, well, okay, that's fine. I mean, whatever. And so we sat down with the...
Well, they gave us time to process, and they said then we'd like to talk over treatment options that we see. So they gave us not quite 24 hours, but overnight to process. And then they wanted to sit down with us again.
And what's Briella thinking? What is she talking about this? Or was it harder for her to process it? And what was her mindset at this point?
Well, we told her what we knew because we had a lot. There's a lot we didn't have answers for. So we told her on Saturday, you have a brain tumor and we don't know a lot more, Briella. The doctors are going to sit down with us again and then we'll tell you everything we know. And just before she went, we were getting ready for bed, and just as we were tucking her in, she asked one of the hardest questions that she's ever asked us. And Mom, do people die from brain tumors? And we had to tell her, yes, people die from brain tumors. And I think at that moment, she was determined to live. She wasn't going to live that death sentence out. She was going to live life big for all it was worth. And so we just, we were like, Briella, actually, we didn't tell her that night because I was thinking she's never going to go to sleep. That was the next day that we told her that people die. We said, let's talk to the doctors and make sure we have all the information right. So the next day we told her that. So I think she went to bed that Saturday night with a lot of questions floating around in her mind.
As we all did, and it was obviously very hard to sleep that night. And she kicked him out of the bed we were supposed to share and slept with me, and he slept in the hospital bed. And she held my hand all night long. The next morning, the short of it was, they said, let's sit down again. And the neurosurgeon and his team sat down with us.
And our oncologist.
And the neurosurgeon just said, you know what? I got to tell you, well, actually, the oncologist wasn't even in that meeting because he said, I got to tell you, I don't. He's like, yesterday diagnosis was incorrect. He said the size of your daughter's tumor, she's a miracle walking right now. It's the size of a pear, and they brought it up and showed it to us. And it was crazy big for her poor little head. And he said, you have 2 days to 2 weeks to 2 months, not 6 to 12 months. So, I mean, total, second shocker. And then he proceeded to tell us, and he was very good about it. I mean, we needed to hear it. And he just said, there's nothing that we have found with this very rare disease. I think this was only his second or third case in his 30 years of being a neurosurgeon that he had seen, and he had worked at Mayo and Sioux Falls both. And so very rare, not something that you see out there every day. And he said, there's no chemo, there's nothing that we have found that has ever done anything other than maybe stunted for a couple of weeks. And he went through the couple options we would have of trying to do radiation, a few other things, and had a couple friends over there. A couple, and we prayed, and youth pastor from our church ended up there, and one of the hardest decisions we've ever made. But
that day we chose just to put her in God's hands because anything medically that could be done didn't offer hope at all. And we know that God is the God of hope. And so
we walked back in the room, and Jaden had been in there, and our realtor, Dina and Jerry, were there. And Jaden had hung out with Briella, and when we walked back in the room, there was three spots to put 3 goals on the board.
3 wishes.
3 wishes. And after that meeting with the neurosurgeon, we walked back in, and the 3 wishes were go home, be home, stay home. And that's what we decided to do. Take her home, give her wish, allow her to live.
No more doctor's appointments.
Live life big. And so that happened, and brought her home that Sunday night.
Monday.
That Monday night.
No, Sunday.
It was Sunday night,
It was
yeah.
Sunday, yes.
And she, Jaden still has a picture of her. Jaden brought her home.
Her smile was as huge as could be.
Jim has told me a few times that she had always been a journaler. And did she continue to journal throughout now this experience and continuing, or was she just home and?
She did not continue to journal. We would have loved to hear what was going on in her mind, because she would tell us lots of things, but those deep thoughts, those are what went into her journals. And I know that she was discussing those with God, because she would tell us about how she was talking to stuffed animals or this little snowman or anything. So I know she was processing, but we will never know until heaven how she was processing all of this. We know that her faith and her favorite verse, cast all your cares on him because he cares for you, is what she was doing daily, moment by moment. I mean, we came home from the hospital, and when we moved here, it was super hard on her. She was in tears, and many nights we would have to lay with her in bed just to get her to calm down, to be even able to go to sleep. She just wanted to go back to Minnesota. Why did God have to move us? And at that point, we started trying to see all the good things that God had given us in the move. And so that was the practice. But when we got home that night, the first night home from the hospital, we are thinking she's going to want us to sleep with her. She's going to want to sleep with us, or who knows what. And we were ready for anything. And we get her ready for bed, tuck her in. And I think we even asked her, do you want us to lay with you? And she's like, nope, I'm good. And she had total peace from the time we came home. I won't say she had peace in the hospital, but as soon as we got home, she had total peace. It was a light switch flip.
Yeah, when we left the hospital, the doctor looked at her and said, Briella, you have a tumor, it's growing, it's not going to stop growing. And yes, people do die of tumors, and it's not something that's going to go away. And so she knew, and just watching her, that was one of our prayers in the hospital, that, one of the prayers that we had blasted out all over the place, was to give us a glimpse of, a peace. And it was an unbelievable peace. And when we come home, I think almost all our siblings were here. I mean, my siblings and Jody's siblings and grandparents, and massively full house. And then, we were thinking literally, wondering if she was going to walk out the door the next morning, of her bedroom, with the diagnosis we got. And so we were steeling ourselves for, her potentially to not be with us for many days at all. And that Monday morning, she got up and people started filtering back in, and grandparents were here. And she got really, really tired. And we're calling it the Monday miracle, because she got really tired. I looked around and she wasn't around. And I walked in, and she's sitting in her bedroom on the floor at the foot of her bed, just kind of like sitting there. And she couldn't hardly stay awake. And I sat down next to her. I said, how you doing? And she said, I just can't stay awake. I'm just so tired. And she just zoned and just kind of like she was falling asleep. And after a few minutes, I I said, I'll be right back. And went and got Jody, and Jody sat down beside her. And of course, you know, she was cognizant and everything, and we're trying not to cry, but we're crying some. And then after a little while, she said, hey, I want to go out and sit on the couch. And so brought her out and sat on the couch, and she was still just out of it. And I was sure we were going to lose her. And we texted the kids and my brother and stuff, and people, you know, relatives started showing up, and everybody started telling her their goodbyes, literally coming over to the couch and telling her goodbyes. And I don't know how much I caught him. I know the brother said afterwards that he was sure she was dying at that point. She was turning gray and everything. And, you know, I'm in the middle of it, and we were expecting that, but from that outside viewpoint. And she got a phone call from one of Cody's friends. He's a missionary over in Europe, of all things. Somehow he got a face.
He FaceTimed.
He FaceTimed her somehow, talked with her a little bit, and one of Cody's longtime friends from college. And somehow during that call, she started perking up slowly, and then he had to get off. And a little while later, she kind of perked up, and she asked to play some games. And we're like looking at her like, what? And so we're calling it the Monday Miracle, because I really truly feel like God gave us, from that day, that was Monday, exactly 12 weeks, 1 week for each year of her life. Gave us 12 more weeks. So finding favor with God in the middle of it.
The whole time knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that God could heal her at any moment, but also watching her decline.
Yeah.
And planning a funeral, because as she was in hospice from the time we came home, that was one of the things they told us, just, you have time to do this, so you need to just prepare. That was the hardest tension to walk.
Oh, yeah.
And to give her hope all the time, just, you know, trying to make life enjoyable and doing all the things that 12-year-olds still want to do.
Jim and I have had a few conversations since then about the number of kind of percentages that you guys are up against, you know, and it's kind of becoming, from what I'm hearing from him, a little bit of a mission for yourselves. And you know, when you have a traumatic event like losing a daughter or a child, and you know, I know, you know, my sphere of circle of friends are a lot of entrepreneurs, or a lot of very driven people, and yet at the end of the day, when you see what truly matters and the why in their lives, it's their kids and their families. And when life throws a curveball like this, now you have some percentages to get over. So Jim and I talked at length about 85% chance that marriage will end in a divorce. What do you see your mission as a married couple, and even as a family with the boys? What is your mission going forward with Briella's story?
Well, our mission hasn't changed. Just as God didn't change from before her diagnosis to after, our mission's still the same, and it's to glorify God, to mirror his image, to show his love to the world around us. And so that's still our mission.
It is. It's you know, Briella made it way further than most kids probably would have with what she had, because she was in gymnastics, and God prepped her tremendously for everything. And watching her love of gymnastics and watching herself decline to the point where she had to allow people to carry her is beyond my comprehension of not being in a frustrated or angry mode. And yet she never complained. And she just kept doing life big. She kept the humor. She kept doing artwork. She kept giving gifts to everybody. And so, you know, as we look at that, you know, we're supposed to be leaving a legacy. Jody and I are supposed to leave a legacy, right?
For our kids.
Not carry on her daughter's legacy. But she'd get up in the morning and she'd kind of bump against the wall a little bit with her balance issues. She'd sit down on the couch and she'd get up and she would walk. And it wasn't a great walk, you know what I mean, for many, many months, quite a few months, but she'd make it work and she got that balance, and it was this muscle memory that kept happening. And she had done it so many times in the balance beam where she could keep that balance, and I truly feel it helped her walk way longer than a lot of kids could have. And throughout this whole time, all Jody and I have done is, we really strongly feel that in a marriage, if a couple prays together, they'll stay together. If you pray together, you will stay together. And we've always done that, and we did that heavily every night during this whole time frame. A lot of it was like, God, I don't know what I need for tomorrow morning for the strength tomorrow, because I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't even know what's going to come up tomorrow. And what has gotten us through is the spiritual muscle memory of years and years that we feel very blessed to have. That we have to thank our parents for as well, for breaking a mold, and both sets of parents allowing God to become part of the family and focusing on God as much as possible. And it gave us a real base that we always felt like, no matter what's going on around us and all of the pain and everything that's going around, we always felt like we had this solid base underneath of our feet. And that even though I couldn't comprehend reading the Bible or seeing scripture or having people in there discussing stuff with us or throwing by things or encouragement, I always felt like God's there, he's got us. And her passing away on February 6th was obviously very tough. And it's not even 2 months later, but we still feel the same way. And Jody's right. Nothing's changed in our mission. God's good. He's here for us. And, it's God's mission for us to be together, to love on each other, to prioritize each other, and to love on others. And so that's what we're here for. That's our mission. And we have 100% confidence with God's strength that he is going to get us through this, and that we're gonna beat the odds of that 80 to 86% of marriages. And it's only through his strength, but we're gonna do it. And we feel it.
And we want to carry on just all of Briella's imagines that she started imagining when she was in 4th grade. And one of the big ones two of them was, imagine if I could paint a picture or draw a whole picture for the whole world to see. Just imagine. And like, her art is being thrown all over there. And I mean, we thought she was just an average 12-year-old little girl, just our Briella. Like, we saw her art from the time she was little, so we didn't even think it was anything extra special, but the world sure thinks it is. And her other imagine if I could help 5 people who need it come to know Jesus. Imagine. And that's what we want to do, is we want to carry on her legacy and help people come to know Jesus, because by telling her story, because God is good. Life is hard, and we've had different hearts, and everybody else has different hearts. Briella had hearts, but God is good, and heaven is real.
Heaven is real. And the other thing is people that come around you. So it's always hard to know what to do when you have somebody that, a friend or family that goes through something, obviously. And everybody grieves differently. We grieve differently, like big time, I mean, how we handle it and how we work through it. And we got to have grace for each other. And I mean, God's been working since the day since 11 a.m. on that Saturday afternoon. And he's been bringing along people alongside us constantly. And our immediate family, extended family constantly,
Well, he started it right at the moving us right to the neighborhood we're in,
Yep.
allowing Briella the friends that she had, establishing friendships for our family, a life group at church, all of that, so that they could come around us.
And those 3 boys that we, they've been, we're still a family. And it's been really cool to see them come around each other, come around us, the family gel together. And, it was for Briella a lot, and that's what she did, but it's still there. And her daughter-in-law, Hope, now that's with us and part of our family. And I mean, they've just been unbelievable. And so, we're still a family, a little bit different of a family, but we're still a family. And so God's still got us. He's still got our back. And just the amount of people that have come around us, and we need it now more than ever. And the reality of it is, it's tough every day. And life ain't fair, and every day we live it. We don't have anybody in the house. We don't have any kids in the house after 24 years of parenting, and we're empty nesters now. But we feel God's presence here, and we just thank everybody so much for the support and for the help that they've been, and calling, and guys, we don't know what to say either, right? So when people call and say, I don't know what to say, we don't know what to say either. So we appreciate when people call, when people text, when people see if they want to visit her. And we'll be honest, if we'll say we can't pick up the phone or whatever, but we definitely need that now more than ever, and we appreciate it. So
I think that's probably the hardest conversation I've had with you is that sudden empty nester. Like this was not supposed to happen for quite some time. Carrying on Briella's legacy is something that you said that has really captured me. And talk a little bit about your plans here. And the first one kicks off May 6th here in Minnesota. Tell a little bit about what this is and how people can get hooked up with this.
Well, we'll be at our church, our home church that we were at for a good number of years in Minnesota, in Annandale, Heartland Evangelical Free Church, sharing with our close friends and our the community that we raised our children up in, and sharing Briella's story, just how God has been faithful in all of the details, every single little detail, and just sharing how he walked with us and the journey that the 12 weeks was, and that the journey we're still walking, but mostly just sharing God, because he loves us.
Yeah, we'll kind of walk through, kind of who she was and the 12 weeks more in detail, and give some of the stories of her and how she, her love for others and her gift giving, and just all of her characteristics. And we're going to really share how we saw God really step up like he always does, and how he has continued to show how he's working and answers the prayer, and how he prepared Briella years before this ever happened, and how he prepared us. I mean, the story goes back, like we talked about, both, Mike, both you and I were contractors, and end up with the roofing manufacturer and on to something else now. But, our paths for a reason. Our paths cross for a reason. And just how God has prepped Jody and I since we were born, you know what I mean? And prepped us for this, prepped Briella for this, and just what that looks like, and some of the stories and the details and stuff of how we've seen God prepare us and her specifically for these scenarios. He doesn't just dump us here. It's a fallen world. God doesn't love pain. He doesn't love us going through this. Obviously, I can't imagine him being in a position where he's sweating drops of blood, asking God to take away the cup that was to be, where he ends up taking the sins of the world on him by dying on a cross and being crucified and beaten. And I mean, he understands it. He felt it as a human. He felt it spiritually, felt it in every way. And so he does get it. He understands. And his plan is not for there to be sin on the earth. It's not for death. It's not for everything. And so he gets angry at the unfairness of life too. And so this isn't a God thing that created this. God created perfection, and that's why it's going to be so cool to get to heaven, because that's what it's going to be like in heaven. And so, so that's what we're going to share.
Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on here. When somebody else comes on, and anybody who watches this, I do encourage you to reach out to Jim and Jody or myself if you want to talk about anything that's going on in your lives. And it's one of those things where it has always captured my attention at the beginning, the early years of Jesus' life, that it says that he grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with both God and man. And yet you look at the life that he lived, and it doesn't really necessarily look like he had a lot of favor from God. And yet that as a Christian and as one who walks humbly with God, you can start seeing some things where times might get tough, and they absolutely will get tough. But there are people who are willing to walk with you. And certainly there's a God that will walk with you. And if anybody would like to discuss these things or many others, I'm sure Jim would be more than happy to take some time away. And I would. 2023 is a life that's 110 miles an hour. It's like a NASCAR race, and it's almost impossible to take a pit stop. But before you wreck, before you crash, there's people who are here to help you and to listen and to pray with you, and would definitely recommend.
Yeah, definitely reach out. And I would say that Briella, if Briella could allow people to carry her, all we need to do is just let God carry us. And it seems hard, but that's how simple it is. And that's all he's asking us to do, and he'll carry us. So thanks a lot, Mike. We appreciate it.
All right. Good night.
Yep.
Blessings on you. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.